So, apparently, after much wrangling and possibly arm twisting, finally compromise, as all parties involved in the freezing of the bank accounts of 20 endsars protesters agreed to settle the matter amicably. According to a statement released by the defense team representing the protesters, their accounts had been frozen for 90 days, pending an investigation by the Central Bank of Nigeria under stringent anti-terror laws for the alleged offenses of money laundering and terrorism. The court granted the order, but then it emerged that the banking regulator, the CBN, did not, in fact, carry out an investigation at all, because according to the defense, the protesters had committed no offense at all in the first place.
The ex parte freezing the accounts of our client expired last week on the 4th of February. And so, we were in court this morning to formally have the matter withdrawn in favor of our clients. And that was what happened this morning. Based on our application to have all the processes filed in the case withdrawn and the application of the counsel to the Central Bank, Chief Michael Anduaka SAN, to withdraw his application to renew the order. The court rightly struck out the entire case and proceeded to make an order defreezing the accounts of our clients.
Femi Falana. Well, for more about this case, I'm joined now in the studio by none other than the lawyer representing the endsars protesters, Femi Falana himself, who's a senior advocate of Nigeria and a well-known champion of human rights in the country. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
So the court lifts an order to freeze the bank accounts of endsars protesters. How did it come to that decision?
Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria had very unusually approached the Federal High Court for an application for a investigation that was going to last 180 days. The court said no, that would be rather too long. I'd rather give you 90 days, during which time you should have concluded investigation into the allegations of terrorism and money laundering. Of course, the court granted the order. That was on the 4th of November last year. But throughout the duration of the order, 90 days, no investigation was carried out. None of the parties was invited. Nobody was queried.
Extraordinary.
So it was just a case of using the instrumentality of the law to intimidate and harass those who are recognized to have exercised their freedom of expression and freedom of assembly. So, and we then therefore communicated that to the court yesterday, that this order had expired, and therefore our application to have it quashed was no longer necessary. Therefore, vacate the order so that my clients could access their bank accounts. And of course, there was no settlement. I mean, you can't settle with the abusal of your right. No, we didn't settle. The government lawyer also agreed that the order had expired and that you also want to withdraw the entirety of the case. And that was the end of the matter. So, and the court now ordered that the accounts be defrozen so that the rights of our clients were restored.
Now, obviously, you've obtained that court order now.
My colleagues is trying to get a copy right now.
Right, but I mean, when exactly are those accounts actually going to be unfrozen? Is there another tortuous process?
No, there can't be, because the lawyer that obtained the order, Chief Michael Anduaka SAN, on behalf of the Central Bank, was present in court, and he did promise that he was going to ensure that the order takes immediate effect. So I expect by now that the accounts will have been defrozen.
Right. I'm just wondering how much this raises questions about the rule of law. and propriety in banking? Because I may be wrong, but I understand that some banks not only gave out the details of their customers' account to a third party, which in this case is the government, but they also agreed to freeze bank accounts initially without a court order to do so. Should they have refused that order from the government, or are they compelled to do so because they are regulated and operating under the authority of the regulator?
In this particular instance, the banks had frozen their accounts before the order was obtained. And we have the evidence, and we're going to take this up so as to ensure that this case serves as a deterrent to the bank, as well as the central bank. Now, you can't just wake up and give orders that accounts be frozen without going to court to explain to the court why the order should be made. The usual practice in Nigeria, which has been endorsed by the central bank, is that if you allege that a criminal suspect might move money from his account in a way that investigation may be subverted, the court will intervene. But the order does not last beyond 14 days. This one is strange, that you are going to close down somebody's account for 180 days or 90 days. No. It's totally strange. It's a section of the Central Bank Act that was referred. Those were laws that are not made in consonant. That are not in tune with the constitutional democracy. And so that is why we are saying, if you are going to order that my account be frozen, in other words, I will have no access, I cannot pay my bills, even I can't pay school fees of my children, you must give me an opportunity to say I have committed an offense or have committed no offense whatsoever, But in this particular instance, the banks acted illegally, and they are going to pay colossally for it, so that they won't do it to other customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what we intend to do this time. And that is how democracy, evolves.
Even if it's a fragile democracy.
Yeah, illegalities.
Yes, absolutely.
And you just sustain democracy and the rule of law. This time around, what has happened has nothing to do with the rule of law. But for me, the most painful aspect, because I was involved in the struggle against military dictatorship. Of course, absolutely. You know this, you interviewed me on a number of occasions.
Absolutely.
But on no occasion, saying this without any fear of contradiction, on no occasion was my account frozen, or the accounts of my colleagues. The military never went that far. So it can be very painful for me, if I'm mentally, what is going on, have we descended so low, in terms of fighting for human rights? So that is why I am personally worried that people are dangerously comparing, very dangerously, the liberties we enjoy under the military and what obtains now. And it's not the best to say, it's not out of intimidation that we are complying with court order, or people should not think that the government is weak. I beg your pardon. Such a language is totally alien to democratic practice.
Absolutely.
Because it's automatic that you must obey court order. And that is the provision of Section 287 of the Constitution, that once an order of the court is made, all authorities and persons in Nigeria shall comply, so there should be no debate.
Well, we're going to talk
about... It's not an act of generosity.
Absolutely. And that's a very important point to make. We're going to talk about the obedience or the disobedience of court orders in the next section, which is coming up shortly. But just on that endsars protest, the government's intention in freezing those accounts, as you touched on, and clamping down on protesters was to ultimately put out the flames of that endsars movement. Do you think they succeeded in doing that, or are the embers still burning and likely to roar again?
I would think the government has, by a careless handling of the protest, incited, as it were, the young men and women whose patience
it's not like us. I mean, my son was involved, and I was trying to
Yes, I mean, I interviewed your son here.
Yeah.
Brilliant young man, I have to say.
Somebody came to Abuja here to get an order that 50 of them be investigated. The order was served on the police. Again, in fairness to the police, there's nothing to investigate. So they just abandoned the order because there's nothing to investigate. These are young men and women exercising their freedom of expression in a very matured manner. And everybody has agreed that they conducted themselves peacefully before the so-called hoodlums were allowed by the police to hijack the protest. I say allowed by the police because Section 94 of the Electoral Act 2010 and Section 83 of the Police Act 2020 have imposed a duty on the police to provide adequate security once there is a protest, lawful protest by Nigerians. Because that was not done last year, that was responsible for, the unfortunate end of the protest. If the police had guided the young men and women in a restricted area, the question of anybody blocking roads would not have arisen. The question of so-called hoodlums hijacking the protest would not have arisen. But what happened was that initially, the protest was hijacked by the government. As you could see in Abuja here, thugs ferried around the city, the capital of Nigeria, shooting at protesters, and they were ferried back to wherever they came from. Nobody arrested them. Again, thugs unleashed violence on the protesters. In fact, some of them were arrested. Some of the thugs are handed over to the police. The police never charged them with any offense. So once you have a situation whereby government, either consciously or unconsciously, encourage thuggery, other thugs saw a free rein,
Right.
and then came out and took over.
Okay, let me just ask you to stay with us for a moment. We've got to take a break. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana. We turn the focus on the disobedience of court orders in Nigeria and across Africa. Stay with me. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now ask any legal practitioner, constitutional expert or student of law and they'll tell you that disobeying a court order is not only a violation of the Constitution but also a dereliction of public duty and a threat to the rule of law. But sad as it may be, disobedience of court orders remains a major problem in Nigeria and across Africa, and topping the list of those most likely to disregard court orders are those who should be the most strident defenders of the law, senior government officials as well as police and the army. It signals a trend that puts the rule of law, the dignity of courts and democracy under severe threat. So when will African leaders who pledge to uphold democracy stop despoiling and blatantly disregarding the pronouncements of the temples of justice on the continent? And with me in the studio to discuss this nettlesome topic, one of Africa's most prominent human rights and constitutional lawyers and champion of the rule of law, the indefatigable Femi Falana. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And we went through this the last time, but the output was horrendous, I'm afraid.
Yeah, unfortunately.
The internet interrupted the show, but you've probably won cases at different courts where governments or agencies of government have subsequently refused to comply with court orders. Tell us about your experience in that regard.
Well, I think generally in the continent, the struggle against military dictatorship didn't quite factor. We didn't imagine, never thought that a civilian government, a democratic government, would disregard court orders. We never thought that a democratic government would make a mockery of the rule of law.
You just thought, get rid of the military and everything will be fine.
And so we didn't quite interrogate the pedigree of those who were going to take over. And so that has been the dilemma in Africa, whereby instead of the rule of law, we talk of the rule of rulers. The rulers hijacked the democratic process and make themselves lords and masters over everybody, including the Constitution. Whereas the military dictators suspended the Constitution. Civilian governments say, yes, we have the Constitution, but they simply disregard the provisions of the Constitution, disregard court orders, and therefore you have a culture of impunity. But I must say that a number of African countries now are beginning to get it right. You can talk of Ghana, you can talk of Botswana, you can talk of South Africa, and a few others.
What about Nigeria?
Where disobedience of court orders is totally alien. Unfortunately, in the case of Nigeria, that is required to provide leadership, regional and continental leadership. Disobedience of court order has become a component part of civilian administration in a way that Nigeria has continued to encourage impunity. Take the ECOWAS, for instance. This is the first time.
That's the regional body,
Yeah,
ECOWAS.
this is the first time the Economic Community of West African States, made up of about 15 member states. This is the first time that a member state, like a VAD, will come out openly that we are not obeying the orders of the ECOWAS court because, we're not party to the, we didn't sign the protocol. No. Under Article 15 of the revised treaty of the ECOWAS, all member states shall comply with the decisions of the court. And this is in line with democratic practice, so that we can show that we're civilized. We do not need dictators, under a democratic atmosphere. So it's the first time. Again, encouraged by Nigeria, because right now, at the last time that I did some work in this area, I discovered Nigeria was disobeying 25 orders, 25 judgments of the ECOWAS court. It has never happened in the history of Nigeria. And so no country in West Africa has such a dismal record of performance when it comes to obedience of court order. And the government has to appreciate that you cannot operate a democratic government without evidence of commitment to comply with court orders.
Well, there've got to be checks and balances. I mean,
otherwise, you are calling for anarchy.
Absolutely.
And that is what the government has to appreciate with respect to whether it's endsars, protesters, or those who are sacked from employment. All institutions of the government will have to be called one way or the other. We all need a court. I may remember, I was one of those, I was detained by the Buhari junta in 1985. Spent about, I think about 6-7 weeks. I was in detention when the regime was toppled. And then the Babangida junta came on board, released us. And I remember when I was leaving the detention on that day, I think August 31st, are you sure you are not emptying this place so that other people will come in? And I think the head of that team, Mr. Gambo Jimeta, was then the head of the team, said, well, Mr. Falana, just go home. You are likely to come back. And of course, on several occasions, I went back. But the point I'm trying to make, whereas General Buhari had detained us, he was now detained under the same decree, Decree 2 of 1984. But my colleagues who have nothing to do with the demand for his freedom, the politicians who have nothing to do with it on the ground that he had detained them, the media said no, he jailed some of us. So we convince ourselves in the human rights community, if we do not intervene, you have a regime that has detained a former president and his deputy If we allow the Babangida junta to get away with it, anybody could be detained in it. So we had to demand for its release. The same general went to court on 3 occasions to challenge the conduct of elections. So all of us will need the courts.
Absolutely.
Someday to defend our right. And that is why the government must learn to kowtow to the rule of law.
Right, and we've got about a minute before we have to take another break. But in those circumstances where court orders are disobeyed, having written presumably countless letters to the offending agencies or government without success, what do you then do?
No, I can tell you this. I have a way of getting the governments to obey court orders when I'm involved, because I go through the entire gamut of the law to ensure compliance. I mean, the case of Kevad I was just telling you about, the ECOWAS court had on 2nd of December last year ordered that Mr. Alex Saab, a diplomat from Venezuela, be put in a house arrest. Oh, the government of Kevad said, no, we won't obey the order. Oh, said no. How dare you? For these reasons, you must obey the order.
They use logic, basically.
Of course. The government was embarrassed. What do we do? Okay, let's pretend that we are using our own municipal law to comply with the order. So they quickly arranged. The Attorney General just woke up one day and said, okay, file an application in court without any application by the applicant.
Sure they didn't think, oh my God, it's Femi Falana. We better just do it.
And I decided to say, okay, we are going to put him in a house arrest. And I can tell you, I have been encouraged by some of the heads of state in the region. I was in Ghana, I think last year. And I learned the president was in town, President Nana Akufo-Addo, his former attorney general, a senior lawyer. And I went to his office, please, is this judgment that Ghana has refused to?
And did he intercede?
Comply? I said, oh, when under the previous regime, what do we do? No, you have to comply, sir.
Okay.
And that was it.
Let's take another break. Brilliant talking with you. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat with the indefatigable human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, and with a focus on Donald Trump's second impeachment trial. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyagolu. Now, my guest today is one of Nigeria's most respected lawyers and human rights activists, Femi Falana, who has devoted his professional life to upholding and defending the rule of law. Mr. Falana is, of course, a senior advocate of Nigeria who for decades has fought to strengthen the democratic institutions in this country. Like many people around the world, Mr. Falana has been watching the impeachment trial of Donald Trump in the US Senate after his supporters stormed the US Congress last month. Mr. Falana has been taking it all in as the Democrats present their case against Mr. Trump, accusing him of cultivating and channeling the violence. So what lessons might there be for Nigeria and other developing democracies around the world from the events of the past few months in the US, countries beset with extreme official interference? And the pro-democracy campaigner, human rights lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, is still with me in the studio. Thank you for staying with us. Yep. Put Donald Trump's impeachment trial in context for us from the Nigerian perspective. There seems to be a lesson there about the need for strong democratic institutions remaining independent of presidential interference.
Well, I think the point being made by the legislators in the United States of America, I think, can be best captured in a statement credited to Lord Denning, the British judge, who once said, no matter how high you are, the law is higher than you. And I think the point being made in the United States of America, even though President Trump is no longer in power, but the Americans are saying that nobody should be allowed to toy with our system, the democratic system, and then get away with it. So the point has to be made that no president will be allowed to incite a mob to attack the Congress in the course of performing their duties. And that point is already coming out very clearly. Forget any manipulation, what some of the Republicans may feel. The point still has to be made that no American president will be allowed again to go through that route. And even if for any reason the impeachment does not succeed, other provisions of the law are already being invoked to deal with those who have been identified in the film. They are being charged with all manners of offenses. Furthermore, and for lawyers particularly, about 62 cases were heard and dismissed in less than 2 months because the cases were making frivolous false charges of fraud, which could not be proved.
Absolutely.
And from the High Court to the Supreme Court, these cases were struck out or dismissed. Some of the lawyers were threatened by the judges that if you do not withdraw these petitions because they are meant to embarrass the judicial system, they are meant to subvert the democratic system. If you cannot prove fraud here and now, we'll deal with you.
And some of these people were judges and justices appointed by the Trump administration.
Oh yes. In fact, Trump in his normal cantankerous, usual cantankerous manner, had to call one of the justices in the Supreme Court. I appointed you. Say yes, under the Constitution, and my appointment is for life. And that was the end of the telephone conversation. President Trump trying to get, I think, the electoral body in one of the states, Georgia, to manipulate and add some figure. And they said, no, Mr. President, it's not possible. So, and that is the point about building institutions.
Well, Georgia has now started a criminal investigation against the former president.
Of course, so that nobody would try it again. It just simply means that there must be sanctions for impunity, unlike here. And that is why I said the difference between advanced democracies and peripheral, neo-colonial system like our own, is that in the West, no matter how high you are, once you breach the law will deal with you.
Absolutely.
Here, if you breach the law, you deal with the law. Either by corrupting law enforcement agencies or through some other manipulation. So you deal with the law. There, the law deals with you. So if you commit what you call what Professor Akoyebode will call the 11th commandment of the bourgeoisie, that shall not be caught. Once you are caught, the law will sacrifice you. It strengthens the system. It helps to make a point that there must be sanction for impunity. Here, there's no sanction. You may be promoted. So a policeman and you disobey a court order, it has no meaning for this. You are promoted. You will even become the Inspector General of Police. Oh yes. Or you become the Chief of Army Staff. You can kill. I mean, somebody wanted to say there was a traffic jam in Zaria in 2015. For that reason, because the guy wanted to attend a social, event, 347 people were killed and buried in a mass grave without autopsy, not post-mortem exercise. And the man wants to become an ambassador now. So you compensate people for impunity. And you are not going to develop that way. So we must start by embracing the rule of law. And that is how to sustain democracy. And those who violate the Constitution or who disobey court orders have to be dealt with so that others will learn to respect the rule of law.
Yep. But that's going to take a long time, isn't it? I mean, but you've been doing this for decades now, and you're still saying the same thing.
Yeah, but it could be worse. But for these interventions, and as I was telling you, we now have a way of dealing with them. Nobody is going to get away with a lot of atrocities. If we are unable, and that's what the ICC is about. And I tell people here, the International Criminal Court doesn't just go to any country. Because of the principle of complementarity, it is only where a state is unwilling or unable to bring perpetrators to book that the ICC comes in. And that is the case with Nigeria now.
Right. Yeah. So just returning to the Trump impeachment, well, the Trump administration and the new one that's come in. Do you see a difference between the Trump and the Biden administrations as far as democracy, human rights, and good governance are concerned, and their outreach with that to the rest of the world? Issues that are of great concern to you?
Well, I have read, I'm very familiar with the history of the democratic process in America, and I can tell you, there has been no president like Trump in America. None. No president in America has exposed that country to such enormous ridicule. No president has attempted to suppress the media in America like Trump did. He tried to destroy all the institutions, abusing judges openly, sending CNN reporters out of the White House. You know, he personalized the presidency and the American system. And so there can be no basis to compare President Trump and President Biden. Biden was a vice president for 8 years under President Obama. And for them, democracy has to take a firm root in America. And the Democratic Party or the government of Biden also wants to ensure that other countries practice democracy. Unlike President Trump, who had no lesson to teach any country.
Well, he believed in America first, which was
America first, to make America great again by promoting racism, you know, and other dangerous policies in America. Now, even though America is essentially the same in terms of ideology, but at least in terms of dignity and how to run a country, President Trump cannot be compared with any president in America. His own was extraordinarily reactionary and wanted the entire system to collapse. Haven't lost the election.
But he was non-interventionist as far as countries practicing democracy and so on is concerned, which is what we were used to seeing former American presidents intervening in other countries, especially in Africa and things like that.
No, but it continued. I mean, America was under him, killing people around the world with, you know.
No, but what I mean is intervening in things like good governance, democracy, because, for example, there's this feeling that a lot of the autocratic leaders in Africa, for example, Ivory Coast, Uganda, and all of that, they became stronger under Donald Trump.
Because Trump was not going to be interested in what they were doing.
Yeah.
In fact, was doing more business with them. Now, that is likely to change now, because it is also in the interest of America that there is peace around the world so that exploitation can continue in a peaceful manner. And that is the difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And the difference will soon be clear.
But do you see, I mean, would you welcome the Biden administration intervening, or some would say interfering further in African political affairs?
No, I will never support any country interfering or intervening in the affairs of African countries or third world countries. Every country should be allowed to develop at its own pace. I will expect the Biden administration to respect the democratic wishes of the Cuban people, Venezuelan people, and others, and of course African people. At the same time, because the world is, what they say, a global village now, you know, again, the U.S. government and other democratic countries must also not go to bed with dictators around the world. And I think the Biden administration has started by telling the coup plotters in Myanmar that come, it cannot be business as usual.
Impose sanctions.
Yeah, and that is the kind of thing that would be expected. But again, because the American government is trying to protect the interests of the people of that country, which people that have been messed up by the military. You know, and of course, that country had been under military for years, during which time there was no development at all. So it's now a question of saying, no, you must allow the people to have democracy. You know, so you expect more of such interventions from the Biden administration, but at the same time, all interventions must be based on the wishes of the people, you know, so that you do not impose the American system on any country. Yeah.
Well, here you are. We've got about a minute before we have to end the chat. I appreciate your being here. Here you are, ranging with ease across Nigeria, Africa, the world on issues of law, democracy, and so on. Where do you think things stand now? You've struggled for better governance for so many years. We've got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of hope. In the case of Nigeria, many of us had almost given up hope before the intervention of the endsars protesters last year. And what those young men and women have done is to show that in 2023, we're going to ensure that this system of oppression, of exploitation, of impunity does not continue. Okay. And that is also encouraging other youths in Africa. If you just follow the developments in Uganda, a 38-year-old man challenging a man who had been in power for 36 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we want to talk with you again. Please come back.
Thank you very much.
Femi Falana.